The Tom Woods Show, episode 2124.
Prepare to set fire to the index card of allowable opinion. Your daily dose of liberty education starts here. The Tom Woods Show.
Folks, police abuse is being talked about all over the country, but what is sadly missing is a libertarian perspective. And you can get that in my free ebook, The Problems with the Police and How to Fix Them, a Libertarian Perspective. Pick it up at problemswithpolice.com. Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. We are continuing with Eric July week. By the way, you all know Eric July by now. If you don't, go to ericdjuly.com and you're just going to say, this is like 5 people in one. I agree. I don't know how Eric does all the things he does. And he never seemed, you know what, the funny thing, before we get into our topic, you never seem rushed or harried. Sometimes people I deal with are trying to juggle so many things. They barely have time to talk to you and they just seem frenetic and just full of stress. And despite the fact that you're starting a blankety-blank comic book company, for heaven's sake, and you work out regularly, you produce your content regularly, you work for The Blaze, you never seem rushed. Do you have a secret to that?
I enjoy what I do. I think that was something that I always wanted to put in that was my life goal, to be completely honest, is I wanted to get in a position where I could pursue whatever it is that I want to do. Now, naturally, I'm a workhorse. I don't know if that's something that was genetic or whatever it was. It's been that way my entire life where I like to work. So sometimes there's a sleepless night here or there and I'm working. I'm always working. But it's a lot easier to do that when you enjoy what you do and you have aspirations. So, of course, my aspirations are, like, for example, with this comic book stuff, I didn't think I was going to be able to do it until I was older. But, we put ourselves in a financial position because of the work that we did to get where we're at. So I enjoy what I do. I genuinely love what it is that I do. So oftentimes, though I am working, and some of it is tedious, a lot of it doesn't feel like it's work. And I'm always thinking about I have my short-term, mid-term, long-term goals. And these are stuff that even if I, let's say, don't need the money or something, this is stuff that I'm always working towards. So I just put myself in a position to be able to do what I love.
Now, I'll tell you, that rings true for me. My father worked at a very, very undesirable job for a lot of years. He was a forklift operator in a food warehouse, and he worked overtime a lot too. And that was not a fun job. There's no way to make that fun. But he did it because, as he told me repeatedly, he hoped that someday I would be able to go to work every day and thoroughly enjoy what I did, unlike him. And little did he know, I wouldn't even have to go to work. I just sit in my home and do what I do. So thank you very much, Dad, for that. So I want to talk to you let's start off talking about The Blaze, because The Blaze is Glenn Beck's network. Obviously, they discovered you and they like what they heard, even though you're not 100% on board with everything Glenn Beck believes. But they felt like there's enough overlap to the point where I don't think if, let's say, Rachel Maddow left MSNBC and started her own network, I don't think she'd look at Eric July and say, wow, he's really good on civil liberties. Let's get him on the... They would never have reached out to you, but yet this conservative network did. So let's start with this. What makes you not a conservative? I mean, apparently there's enough overlap that The Blaze would have some interest in you.
Right.
But you never, ever call yourself a conservative. So what makes you not a conservative?
Well, I think it's more so of what I am versus what I am. I look at it like, okay, I am a libertarian. I am an anarcho-capitalist. So that is what I'm always leading with. And that's what I'm always saying. Now, when you look at like your general run-of-the-mill conservative, there's often things that are that we don't really, agree on, be it in like war efforts. And, oftentimes they make up a lot of exceptions as far as to when they think that the government should be involved in the economy and all of that, versus when I'm like, oh, hell no, this is not something that we should be advocating. We should never be advocating. But that's more so, I guess, the biggest part of it is just what I am versus what I'm not. And to your point, like, this is why I don't, for example, I don't like the whole, okay, both sides are the same. I think it's stupid. Often we do this, just for the sake of it being easy and being comfortable. But like you mentioned, there's a 0% chance that MSNBC, or let's say some more mid-tier, like what Blaze is, like the Young Turks, they were never going to reach out to me and say, hey, we'd like to have you as like kind of as a video contributor role where you come in on various shows and talk about. That never happens. And folks have asked me before, like, hey, why don't you appear on like leftist, more so leaning, like kind of those bigger platforms? It's like they don't ask me.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not there. They've never asked. Not been asked one time by the MSNBCs of the world to appear on their platform. That has never happened, ever happened to me. And yeah, I will go a day where there may be a topic there and me and some of the panelists on News and Why It Matters, I may be on a complete opposite side of it. That's fine. I can leave from that situation. And, me and Glenn talk all the time and, maybe something that we didn't agree with on that show. And, we'll talk about it a little afterwards, but never in a sense of where he's like, man, I don't really want you ever to say that. No, that's never happened to me. And people that watch like the various shows that I appear on, they've never seen me flip or fold on the principles. I'm 100% unapologetically libertarian. And that has never been one of the things that, let's say, the people that call the shots over there they've never been like, okay, man, you can't be saying stuff like that. It's never happened. That's never happened. And that's why I love being over there.
This is a small tangent, but I'm just curious, just in parentheses here. If you went on tour with Backwards, do you have an understanding with them that you could either take a little time off or just broadcast in remotely from wherever you are?
Yeah, like before I did something that was more official, that was a big part of like our negotiations. It was like, hey, y'all got to understand that there are going to be instances where I am not going to be accessible physically. You know what I mean? However, I can remote in and do all that. And they were totally understandable. I think of me being involved in all of these things was a big part of why they were so intrigued and wanted me there in the first place.
Okay, good. All right. Just wondering about that. So do you have any stories from the Blaze where, maybe people come up to you and say, I never thought of it that way, or anything like that where you feel like you've made a little progress?
All the time. I think that it's I don't want to say even a joke because it's the truth. She always says, like with the COVID situation, she's like, every time, like we'll have a guest that maybe we don't have. And she's like, I say all the time about Eric on the show is that these last couple of years has felt like the year of Eric July and the year of the libertarian because he's been right on so much. And he's been like screaming, like, I've been trying to tell y'all this all the time. All the time. When I got Chad Prather to admit that taxation is theft, and now Chad is doing a show where he's like, yeah, he calls himself a July-tarian because, he's starting to get on board with the idea of like decentralization, secession, and those types of things. Like, this is what it's about. And that's why I thought to do it. Like, it wasn't something that it was just financially beneficial for me because, yeah, it was. But I thought I could really plant seeds to that crowd because there's areas where, this is why, of course, I would always say that this whole, and both sides the same, is such a stupid thing. I can utter the term capitalism to a general conservative and they're not going to like screech, right? I can utter those like the idea of a freer market and they're not going to screech. The problem is they often are inconsistent on some of those values. However, they themselves even like to think that those are principles that they uphold. So what I've been trying to do and what my goal has been is those instances upon which they are inconsistent on the issue, how can I get them to change? And I have absolutely had so many conversations with not just behind the scenes on the shows where, they start to come over to my side of things. And man, that's what it's about.
I think that is a very effective approach. You find where you have the common ground, which is there's plenty. And then you kind of nudge them a little bit about you're not consistently living up to your own stated views here. Because now you want, the government to do this, that, or the other thing, but you just got done telling me that it's not the government's role to do X, Y, or Z, and here you are advocating it. Well, that can, especially when I was younger, I thought I was like the most free market person there was. And then I started hanging out with Mises Institute people, and I thought, oh my gosh, I think I'm the most left-wing guy here.
Yeah.
What's going on here? But that's exactly what reached me. It was, either you want to live up to your principles or you don't. So that's an effective way. And then now foreign policy, there are also ways you can appeal to them that, arguments that work for that type of audience. But let's say you're in a you're in an anti-Blaze situation. You're surrounded by people who have exactly the opposite opinion. So you're in a left-wing echo chamber. You're the only person who's not an echo. Do you have a way of talking to them, even though you don't have as much common ground? You can't talk about capitalism and everybody knows what you mean and they view it as benign. Nevertheless, do you have like a crowbar where you can kind of pry your way in to the conversation in a way that gets them thinking?
Yeah, it just depends on like what subculture of these leftists that, like, for example, that we're talking about. My success, for example, with even my friend, like a lot of my closest friends, like all of my closest friends, people that were like, let's say that were actually in my wedding, you know what I mean? Groomsmen, all black, like every last one of them. But the ones that are like my groomsmen, like Brando, Dave, my closest friend, my best man, these are all like liberty-minded thinkers, now. Obviously, I was the first one. But, it's not just our friendship, but, for example, there are previous guys that I used to, like, I grew up with in some case, maybe not been close friends as well, with where I was able to resonate with them on, like, the subject of, like, money, right? For example, Tom, you rappers, right? Rappers, and like they always talk about money, money, money. Like that's their thing. They actually like it, right? It's something that they brag. If you listen to your general rapper, I don't think that person's a leftist. If you actually listen to what it was they are generally saying, but they tend to just go through the motions with that stuff. So like the subject of money, particularly sound money, has been a way that I've been able to resonate with, let's say, people that are on that side. But a lot of them, I think people are on the side of leftists just because they are on the side of leftists, if that makes sense. It's not anything that they logically came to. Then again, I mean, is that even possible? Leftists that may be listening to this that probably get pissed off at me saying that, but is that even possible for them to logically come to that conclusion? But a lot of them are there just to be there. So what do I do? I try to take what I know that, okay, look, you don't believe like what the like leftist philosophy on as far as like more socialist, state socialistic, communistic. I know you don't believe that. I know it is that you don't believe that. But there's a side that really embodies, like if you want to be left alone, you want to be able to tend to your own devices with the money that you earn, I'm right there with you. But the people that you support, they're not like that, right? So I take even these ideas that from a capitalistic standpoint, I think that there's more people that we often give credit to that are more so aligned with us than they are the left on the subject of money, on the subject of making it, on the subject of entrepreneurship. But they identify with them because they do. Maybe it's upbringing, maybe it's out of fear, maybe it's out of convenience, but they don't actually believe that stuff. So I take a subject like that and I'm like, hey, man, come chat with me a little bit. You align with that side because what? Because you're told or because, again, it's convenient. But on this subject, I know you more so align with me. And this is what we, from a philosophical standpoint, believe in. And that's your ticket. That's your ticket. But yeah. I mean, I think you can say that for basically anybody, but I understand why a lot of folks argue from the standpoint of like, okay, what does the left argue in trying to meet them there? Like on a subject that you may think they're okay on. But I think more so is the alpha approach and like, okay, you have a philosophy that it is that you believe in. How do we make this appeal to that side of folks that are aligning with them, not because they actually believe in these topics, but because they're just being told or it's a state of convenience? I think there's more people than we often give credit to.
That's an interesting approach to it because I can point to some gangster rap where the theme of the song involves what it was like growing up in less than ideal conditions. And now I got out of it. Yeah. And now I'm super successful.
100%.
Yeah. And it's not, now that I'm super successful, I'd like you to redistribute everything I earned.
Exactly, right? That is just the power of culture, man. A lot of these people are adopting political positions just because they are adopting the political position. It has nothing to do with some kind of conclusion that they actually came to.
Hey, folks, just a quick riddle here from your old friend Woods. What gets more expensive the longer you wait before you buy it? Well, I guess in an inflationary environment like this one, pretty much everything, but especially life insurance. Life insurance typically gets more expensive as you age, so it's smart to get a policy sooner rather than later. And of course, it's very important to protect your family's finances. And that's where Policy Genius, today's sponsor, comes in. Policy Genius is your one-stop shop to find the insurance you need at the right price. You head to policygenius.com to get started. In minutes, you can compare personalized quotes from top companies to find your lowest price. You could save 50% or more on life insurance by comparing quotes with Policy Genius. The licensed agents at Policy Genius are on hand through the entire process to help you understand your options and make decisions with confidence. The Policy Genius team works for you, not the insurance companies. And how about this? Policy Genius doesn't add on extra fees, doesn't sell your info to third parties, and it has thousands of 5-star reviews across Google and Trustpilot. They have options that offer coverage in as little as a week and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Since 2014, Policy Genius has helped over 30 million people shop for insurance and placed over $150 billion in coverage. Head to policygenius.com to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. Let's talk for a minute about the police, because when I talk about the police among, let's say, left-wingers, I feel like a right-winger. But when I talk about the police among right-wingers, I feel like a left-winger.
Yeah, most definitely.
Because I feel like they both are missing something on this. And I suspect you kind of agree with me. What do you think they're both missing? And what's the unique Eric July take on the police?
Yeah, it can be like pulling teeth sometimes if you're just blank slate arguing, let's say, with not arguing, or like trying to have a conversation with, let's say, your general conservative about police. But my approach has been, I look at the opportunity that Summer of Love in 2020 gave us, where a lot of conservatives were, I don't know what color pill you want to call it whatever you want. But a lot of them, they had to wake up because they saw that people were going to destroy their neighborhoods, burning their businesses to the ground. And often the people that they had been backing for so long sat and did nothing. Hell, in some cases, they protected the other side, and it killed a lot of people, right? But what I've said to them, because often they, definitely a conservative, will still have the pro-police position, not because they actually are pro-police, but more so because they think that the leftists are irrational, and they have allowed the leftists to control the conversation. So it's like, well, the left is, they're the ones that are against current policing, so I have to be against them. And it's like, well, why have we allowed them to control it? Like, well, they don't get a monopoly on that. And oftentimes, like you see with the Cory Bushes of the world, when they say defund the police and all that, they aren't actually for defunding police. It's more like rerouting funds to the woke police is essentially all that it is. They don't actually believe in any of that stuff it is that they say, which is why they can speak out of both sides of their mouth and claim to be anti-police while also wanting you to be disarmed, which are antithetical positions. So it's more of, again, going back to treating yourself and what you believe in as if it should exist, as if it's supposed to. Like, you're right. And I have to remind people of, like, you're the ones that are right. Don't let them control the conversation. It was like, I don't know if you remember during that summer, it was often some, the leftists that off their masquerade as libertarians were so upset at me because I was like, I'm not taking the side of a person that I know wants me dead just because they're against the police. Because if it was up to them, they'd be in control of that institution and they'd be using that institution to inflict violence upon me, right? And again, it goes back to, I refuse to allow them to control the conversation. They don't get monopoly on being against police. That's not how this works, but they have been able to control the conversation as such. So that's more of my approach, is stop allowing the left to control the conversation.
Right. Well, I know for a fact, because I heard Michael Malice interviewing one of these right-wing podcaster, radio host people. It might have been Buck Sexton, but it might have been somebody else saying something like, I really started to think differently about the police and to think that maybe you, Michael Malice, have been right about this because of just watching what's been going on, particularly in Canada with COVID. So not even rioting or violence, but the police enforcing crazy rules. And to say, well, I'm just doing my job. Well, then it's a terrible job. Okay, then
sucks.
You shouldn't have that job. This is an awful thing. because suddenly they realize, well, wait a minute, who's going to enforce all these crazy things that we oppose? It's the very group of government employees that we exempt from our usual criticism of government employees.
Yeah. Again, it's the same with the left on some of these issues where a lot of them have the position just because they have it. But I deal with this in like from a cultural like with the stuff that I talk about day to day, like non-political based stuff, but it has some sort of social political stuff that is tied into it. Trying to get people to understand that the other side, you've allowed them to control the conversation. And that's how they win. It's not because they have the best and brightest ideas. It's because often you are reacting to what they're doing instead of actually getting on the attack. And all I mean on that is treating yourself like you have a philosophy in a political stance worth advocating. And once you treat yourself like that, you don't just sit up here and have positions just for the sake of being on the opposite side of the other side. Like you often have, okay, how about this? This is my position. And you maybe have a similar position, but it's not so similar because you only have that position because X, Y, and Z reasons. So it's all about leading with the ideas that you actually believe in. And then you won't be making an adjustment based upon what the left is doing all the damn time.
In a free society, we would have police. We would have some service providing people with security. But the way I try, if it ever comes up, if I'm with right-wingers and we talk about this, I just say, just think about the incentives for the existing police system that we have now. First of all, it's a monopoly. It's basically a monopoly. In terms of the kinds of services they provide, it's a monopoly. And what do we know about monopolies? Over time, you get worse quality service at a higher price. Now, that certainly seems to describe what we have now. So we have that fact about monopolies. But then we also have the problem Mises identified with socialism, which is the calculation problem. Since there's no profit and loss, because they're not offering their service freely on the market to paying customers, they have no idea, even if they wanted to serve the public, how to optimally allocate the labor services of all these policemen. Should all of them be sitting there on the highway watching people drive by and trying to nab them? Should they be investigating homicides? So what they wind up doing is doing a lot of what brings in revenue for the department and not as much about chasing after that guy who just stole my car stereo. I mean, I've told the story a bunch of times, but years ago I was in grad school. I was in New York. A friend had come from Connecticut. He drove over to see me, parked his car on the side of the road. We went in to eat, came out, and his stereo system had been stolen. So we flagged down a policeman. I was a naive kid, we flagged down a police. And the police said, "Oh, that's a shame. I'm sorry that happened," then just drove away. I mean, basically saying there's absolutely nothing we can do about it, so forget it. If a private sector firm had that as the response, it's our responsibility to keep you safe and your property safe. And then as soon as you complain about something, the answer is, don't expect anything ever to happen, we'd be up in arms. But when it's a government agency, we make excuses. They can't do everything. Excuses we would never make for a private company.
Yep, exactly. And that gives what incentive do they have to be efficient when that is certainly the approach? And that's your ticket. Definitely when you're arguing or speaking with, let's say, conservatives, certainly on this issue, it's like, okay, man, not all the time, but often we agree that from the perspective of markets, it is far better suited to solve a problem in comparison to, let's say, a bunch of bureaucrats or, in this case, a bunch of people that just say have a territorial monopoly on use of force, violence, and ultimate decision making. We accept that that's more suitable in the other places in the market. Why do we make the exception, or why do you make the exception for the police and the state in that regards? You know what I mean? Why are they best suited to do that if they aren't in other cases of food and everything else? So, it's a lot more people these days that are often aligned with conservatives that are having at least better positions on the police.
One more thing. Has anybody ever said to you, you should run for office?
Yes.
Okay.
Every day.
Okay. Explain why you wouldn't. Or would you?
I wouldn't. I would not, because my effectiveness is doing what I do now. I think being involved in politics, it would severely hinder my influence. It would severely hinder my ability and my mobility to do all of the things it is that I do. My belonging what I believe is my calling is where I'm at right now. And that's being involved in the entertainment industries and being able to plant my seeds there and have people come to Liberty by way of my music, by way of me speaking about whatever's going on in entertainment, by way of what I'm doing with the comic book stuff. That's my calling. That's where I'm best suited. That's where I'm going to be most effective. And I think time has told that. So I just wouldn't want to be involved in politics because exactly that. That's just simply not my calling.
Fair enough. And of course, that is exactly the answer that I give. So next time anybody asks me, I'll just play a snippet from this episode from you. We'll just leave it at that. All right. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate your time today.
Thanks again.
All right, folks. Tomorrow is the last day of Eric July week, and we are going to cover one of my favorite topics, which is monetizing your haters. If you're going to have haters, might as well make a little dough off them, and Eric is the master of that. So we're going to have a little fun talking about that tomorrow, and I'll see you then.
Become a smarter libertarian in just 30 minutes a day. Visit TomWoods.com to subscribe to the show for free, and we'll see you next time. Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.